fiction, science fiction, horror, fantasy, crime, LGBT, thriller.
You have now entered the House of Mystery.
Well, welcome back into the House of Mystery. I'm Al Warren, and we got Diamond Dave sitting in for this interview.
Yeah.
Because he's that kind of guy, you know.
That's the new name now.
Yeah. When do you go on tour with the rest of Van Halen?
I know. Well, I'm waiting. I'm waiting to find out, you know.
You're waiting to find out, yeah. I think
Dave TV, you know.
Yeah. They're scared of you, man. They're scared.
They're not going to let me.
Yeah, they're not going to let you.
No.
You'll steal the show.
Exactly. That's right.
Sammy Hagar's on the run.
He is. Oh, yeah.
Can't drive at 55.
That's right.
Anyway. Well, let's just get to our guest. I know he's waiting. So we've got an author. His book we're talking about is Same Difference. It's a Fran and Ken Stein mystery, and it's book 2. E.J. Copperman, thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
E.J., so how did you get into this world of writing? Like, did someone hurt you when you were young or something?
Probably, but it was before I was cognizant, so I can't really remember. How did I get into it? I've always been into it. I got out of college and I was a newspaper reporter for about a year and a half, and I went into PR for even less time than that because I was really bad at it. And I spent some years working on trade magazines, but all that time I was writing screenplays that didn't sell. So the latest one came in the version, in the guise of a book narrative and a first-person narrative. I couldn't turn into a screenplay. And so I would fool myself by pretending to write a novel, and I wrote a novel in 6 weeks and 5 days. So go figure that one out.
Let's talk about this book here, this Same Difference. This is book 2. So you've got two people, Fran and Ken Stein, and it's kind of a mystery and stuff. So tell us the little premise of what the series is about. Well,
if you look at their names, notice that there might be something just a trifle unusual about these people all together, and you get they were not so much born as, and they're a little bit more superhuman than most, but not in the, wearing sex and flying around type of style. So they're an unusual to go around solving mysteries. Actually, own a investigative agency that, speaking, works towards helping people who are adopted get in touch with their birth parents if everybody's amenable to that.
So when you do this kind of a series, do you have it outlined ahead of time? Do you kind of know where you're going with it, or does this just happen as you go?
Oh Lord, no! I never outline. It would. I don't believe in outlining for me. Other writers swear by it, and good for them. If it works for you, do it. For me, if I were to outline everything ahead of time and know everything that was going to happen before I sat down to write it, I'd be bored. And you don't want to bore the author writing your book.
Well, how do you keep track of your continuity?
I do keep a series Bible. I have a file on my computer that tells me who everybody is, and any kind of points that might jump up again somewhere along the line. I'll make sure that I take care of them. But that's as it happens. If I'm and a character pops up, I'm going to write that character down to the Bible so that I'll remember it for later on. If I want to do it 3 books from now, that character back, I know who they are and why we know them.
How well do you know your characters?
We don't socialize or anything.
What do you consider your relationship to your characters to be?
I consider them to be characters book I'm writing, and I'm the guy who writes it. I don't think of it as having a relationship, but I can tell you, if you wake me up at 3 o'clock in the morning, you better damn well not, and ask me what my character would do in any given situation, I'll know.
Well, can you hear your characters? Do you have an inner monologue? Is that kind of how you create your dialogue, or do you have some other way?
Dialogue is probably my favorite part of writing. I love writing dialogue. I guess it's kind of an inner dialogue, that I can hear them talking. It doesn't really necessarily work that way, but I describe it in terms that are better than that. It's really a question of how you start what they're talking about, and then having everybody, react to what the last person said and back and forth, and having, actual dialogue with real people having a conversation. instead of people plot points on your head.
Is there a particular reason you have your investigators doing the job that they do with helping people find their parents?
Well, considering how they came to be, they never really got to know their parents very well. And so I think they feel a certain loss in that area, so they try and help other people who might feel that way, kind of find some closure.
And so the premise is now on book 2, what happens to your characters in book 2?
The case in book 2 is that a middle-aged man comes to see them, actually comes to see Fran. Ken gets involved later, and tells her that his daughter is missing. He's worried for her safety. Now, as it turns out, the daughter has just transitioned from male to female. There's some unfinished business between the two of them, as well as some stuff that his daughter wasn't telling him about what she was into before she vanished. So all this is part of what's going to happen in the course of the book.
What point of view do you like to write from? Like which character?
Fran's the narrator. She'll tell you what's going on in the book. I mean, I've written a few series now with a female point of view. They seem to be more popular among readers, so I stick with that. I know that, there are some in the publishing business who think that male narrators are not as accepted, so I do it that way. So Fran gets to narrate the books. Therefore, she gets to complain about her brother all the time, which is part of the fun of the series.
And how do you tackle writing from that voice from a female point of view?
Half the people I know are women. I'm married to one. It's not that hard. Have you ever read Spencer Quinn?
No.
Okay. Spencer writes a series, and the narrator of the book is the detective's dog. And I ran into him at a conference once, and I said, I got to know, do people come up to you and ask you how you can possibly write from the perspective of the dog? And he said, no. And I said, I write from the perspective of a woman, and people think that's extraordinary. I don't understand why. I talk to women all the time. I know what they sound like. Some of them, anyway. I know what my character sounds like because I created her out of nothing. Of course I'm going to know how she talks. Of course I'm going to know how she would put a sentence together and what she would choose to say and what she would not choose to say. I understand the perspective of people who think that it's strange that a person from one, gender can write in the voice of another. I'm a writer. I can write anything. I can write any character. I don't see why that's, surprising.
Well, I'm not sure that I think it's for me for surprising. I think when you're talking about a female perspective, it can be the same as a male perspective in a lot of aspects. Mm-hmm. But there can also be a difference, like especially when you get into, in general, a female might be treated differently in a job than a male.
Of course.
Or something, depending on the job. So what's that like to feel that? So I always like to think, well, how do you get into that mentality of being a female and you're directed into different situations where you have to know what it's like to feel that way? Because as a male in real life, in your real life, you would be treated like a man. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, so when you went to apply for a job, the guy's going to talk to you like a guy. If you're a woman, he might be misogynist. He might not be, but so there's a difference in that way. I'm thinking about more that, and if you come across that in your story, how you can do it.
It's going to come up sooner or later. I mean, she's going to go out there and deal with, men and women and like anybody else that she happens to run into, and they're going to treat her, based on their personality and what they perceive about her. Now, Fran is a very unusual woman in that she's extremely tall. She's very strong. There's obviously something a little bit different about her, but people don't know what it is. So you get more of that. But I used to write a series, all the series are pretty much first-person narratives, and I used to write a series about a guy who identified on the autism spectrum. I'm not on the autism spectrum, so I think it was probably more difficult to get into his head than it is to get into Fran's or any other female characters I've written, because he actually thinks a little differently. Now, maybe that might be the wrong way to put it. His voice is going to be different than most people you meet. Fran's is probably not.
Now, do you ever put like a subtext in there? Do you have a meaning underneath the story or entertainment that you hope people take away from the book?
More than anything else, I want people to read the book and be entertained, and hopefully laugh a lot because it's supposed to be funny. Are there themes that, is it about something more than that? Sometimes, in Same Difference, we're dealing with a trans woman. And that's not going to be the same as dealing with somebody else. There are aspects of the story that hinge on the fact that she's trans and how trans people tend to be treated in society in general, particularly by law enforcement, which doesn't have a fabulous record there. So she's going to see things differently. The book might open up a little bit to some people who really, haven't had a lot of exposure. I'm not deep into the trans community myself. I know a little bit about it, and I don't claim to be an expert by any stretch. It's a group of people, a subset of humanity, who are being treated differently than most people, and that lends something to the book, as I see it.
Well, with the you had mentioned the comedy aspect.
Yeah.
With the comedy aspect of the novel, I guess there's a need, kind of like with like stand-up comedians. They talk about like comedic timing. Do you think there needs to be a timing to make comedy work in prose fiction?
Definitely. If it doesn't have rhythm, particularly dialogue, if it doesn't hit on the right beat, it's not going to be funny. So you do have to write it. I wouldn't say like a stand-up routine, because I wouldn't go near trying to write a stand-up routine. But you do have to think about it. Think about how the reader is hearing it in their head. And it has to hit on the right syllable. It has to have the right number of syllables. The joke has to be in a place where it belongs rather than coming in, like, I've never written, this is my 32nd book, I want to say, 32nd novel. I never wrote a funny murder, okay? I don't see how, other people do it, I can't. To me, where the comedy comes from in a murder mystery is how the people who are currently not dead react to that, okay? So if the character, in some cases this happens, in some cases it doesn't, the character who's narrating comes across a murder victim somewhere along the way, they find a dead body. That happens all the time in mystery novels. It's how they react that's going to either be funny or not, depending on, what the situation demands. Sometimes you can identify characters that the reader is supposed to think is not that great a person by how they react to the situation. And there can be fun with that. You can make fun of them too.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, what's your favorite character to write?
I don't have one. Characters are characters. You can't have a favorite character, because then you're not writing the other characters from their point of view. Every character in the book thinks that they're the star of the show, okay? Cop number 3, who exists only to slap the handcuffs on at the end and go home, goes home and says to his or her spouse, guess what happened to me today? They think it's about them. Everybody does. If I start choosing, favorites among my characters, I'm not going to be able to write the other ones as, individuals the way they pretty much have to be.
Well, how's this? Do you like writing bad characters, the ones that cause the trouble, or maybe they're the culprits, better, or do you like it? What do you find easier to do, writing bad people or good people?
Well, again, there are no bad people or good people. The people that we identify as evil or, whatever, don't think they're evil. They think they're doing everything for perfectly reasonable aims. They're doing it because they want more money, or they want to not be found out, or they want whatever it is they want. They think that their motivations are reasonable. Now, as a reader, you can make your own judgment. Clearly, they're not, that's not reasonable. If you hit somebody over the head with a pipe wrench and kill them, that's not a good thing to do. You can't look at a character as good or evil. Look, the main characters in pretty much all my novels are what, from my point of view, would be considered good people, okay? They're trying to do something to help others in one way or another. And they have a sense of humor, because I would be incredibly bored if they didn't. To identify characters that way, I think, cheapens the character. It's the same thing as saying before that all the characters think they're the star of the story. They all also think that they're in the right, no matter what.
But I was going to say, this is a cozy mystery, so I take it there's no real violence in the book.
It's cozy-ish. It's cozy adjacent, I would say. People think of cozy mysteries as, it's all very soothing and it's not scary at all. And I don't write scary. There will be the occasional quote unquote bad word, nothing too heavy, but I don't believe he walks into a room, trips over a dead body in the middle of the floor and goes, "Oh, drat." I just don't think so. That doesn't make sense to me. Will there be violence? There will be some violence. Why? It's a murder mystery. Somebody just got killed. Will it be gory, heavily described violence? No, because I'm not interested in that.
So how many more are you going to do? Or do you know? You just kind of doing it as is?
I turn 67 next month. As long as as my heart's still working, I'll be right.
Yeah. Are you going to keep doing this series? Do you continue a long time with series? Do you like doing those?
I continue as long as the publishers let me.
Well, yeah.
If they send an email and go, "Well, that's it for this series," I can't argue with them. I mean, I can, but I'm going to lose.
Listen, so do you like to interact with fans, listeners, readers, all that sort of stuff? Do you do social media? Do you have a website?
I'm on social media. I am. I'm on, not calling it X. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook. I'm sort of on Instagram, although I don't speak well in photographs. Think I'm anywhere else? Blue Sky, maybe? I think I have an account on Blue Sky. I love to interact with readers. I love to hear from them. I love to get emails from them, although occasionally, once in a while, you get one that you didn't love that much. I like to talk to them at conferences when I can go. Right now it's VoucherCon down in Nashville. I wasn't able to go to that one this year, and so I'm feeling kind of itchy. But I love to hear from readers. Readers are not in the way of guess what you should write in your next book, because I'm not going to do that. But to hear from them about what they liked, what they didn't like, I love to hear from that because, writers get a vacuum. I sit in my office downstairs in my house and I write whatever jumps into my mind at that given moment, and then you send it out into the world. And if you don't hear back from readers, you really don't know how it's being received. I mean, the occasional review in a trade publication or something like that, really hearing from the people you're trying to reach. So it's always great to hear from readers. Readers, get in touch with me anytime you like. EJ Copperman at gmail.com.
Well, there you go. And do you have a website too, or are you not?
I do have a website. It's strikingly ejcopperman.com. There is jeffcohenbooks.com. If you want to go look at it, I don't update it all that often because it's not that much is going on under that name, but feel free.
Yeah, and we appreciate you being here. So anyway, well, the book, same difference. Fran and Ken Stein Mystery, and it's book 2, E.J. Copperman. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for inviting me. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks, EJ.
This has been a production of the House of Mystery Radio Show. To find out more about our show, guests, or hosts, go to our website at houseofmysteryradio.com.